are now tapped into the soft power frequency.
Welcome to Tapped In, our weekly show about unraveling and the life that comes after. My name is Siobhan Diores. I'm your co-host here with Dr. Kiki, and the energy this morning is a little bit of nerves, a little bit of spooks, as well as a lot of love and grief, because this is a live show in real time, and we have seen I thought we had already seen the peak of what human violence could do, and yet we somehow still they take it to another level. And so we're going to begin today with a minute of prayer and quiet, for the people of Rafa, for all people globally being met with the violence of white supremacy and colonialism, and specifically to the Palestinians in Rafah and those impacted by the massacres enacted by Israeli occupational forces. Taking a breath in and exhaling out. If you're watching with us, we know that you care. We know that your heart is also with oppressed people for liberation worldwide, and just inviting you to arrive with us to shake off any extra energy that may be clinging onto you. Give an audible hum, softening into this conversation, because the nerves are stemming, because we have a lot to say, and it's going to be potentially, I don't think too much about who it's going to ruffle or disrupt, but there are a few indicators this morning, spiritual and material, that hinted at the friction that this will bring. And we're no strangers to friction. This whole show is about unraveling. However, we always want to do it for the purpose of connection and learning and building understanding and exploring possibilities, and not for the sake of shock or sensationalizing or shame. And so just stepping in today to set that intention, to share that intention, that is our where our hearts are at today. Our hearts are here to discuss and share our thoughts on activism, performative activism, and performance in general, as people who have committed to showing up to use our voices for liberation. If you joined since episode 1 of this season, we've been talking about the concept of kuleana, the Hawaiian word for responsibility, and what that kuleana is for Kiki and I since our soft power trip to the Kingdom of Hawaii in April. And part of that responsibility has been to show up, um, and just be courageous in pushing, not pushing through. We always are open to pausing or rescheduling if we have to, but really sitting with, could we show up today? Is it important for us to show up today, despite wanting to curl in a ball and cry in bed all day? And the answer today was yes, that we can. And so, Dr. Kiki, how are you doing at this moment?
Oh, I'm feeling better now that I'm with you and in the soft power frequency. Starting off today was a little bit in shambles of just like how to gather myself and to kind of like continue on like as my schedule has dictated for me today. And so just as you said, like very much in alignment with where I'm at right now, of just grateful for community, grateful for the mirroring and the community that I can share what's on my heart at this time, be witnessed in that. Again, we're talking about performance today, and so how much that has been a major part of my journey to where I'm at today, and also some of what I've inherited from my biological family, and just really interested in how this is all starting to come together in my heart, in my body, to better understand my responsibilities moving forward in this time.
Yeah, we shared last week that we're practicing for this season to let the topics emerge. And I woke up this morning stuck and I texted Kiki, like, I am going to need you to take the lead here. So thanks for just accepting that because um, yeah, you had the space to sit and ground and pull some cards to guide that, and this is what emerged was performance and performative activism and the inheritances that we have. And this is something we talked a little bit about last week, which was really, being people that understand how expansive the universe and our souls are, grounding into the idea that we still are in this life and this body with these lineages for a reason, and that really grounding us into what our responsibility is in this lifetime. And I think that is why I'm just really grateful for you and for our relationship, because I think we both have that level of experience as well as privilege to be able to come and sit here, and we're not here to intellectualize anything that's been happening, but just to share from the heart, in case that's helpful to anyone else. And one thing you said that made me think about, like right before we went live, was how much this practice of tapped in is remind I didn't realize until today how much it really is similar to doula work, and how becoming a doula really pulled me into the necessity to have a practice of how to check in with myself and what kind of steps and toolkit I have to um, get grounded in myself. Because as my story goes, I was a doula attending births through the like most tumultuous times of my life the last few years, and that really pushed me to, one, like really never I was always aware of my energy, and necessity to not overextend myself, and that's what really pulled me into rest practices, somatic practices, as well as learning how to, without bypassing, really kind of compartmentalize in a healthier way what I'm dealing with, so that I can show others who have the greater need at that moment. And so just sharing that like we're not here to like push past our needs. I'm really grateful that Kiki and I have this kind of system where we hold space for each other off the lives, of course, so that we can really support each other in showing up for our roles as doulas. And that's something that became kind of a principle in my doula practice very early on, and why I've ended up holding a lot of space for doulas, because we do that is what our call and our commitment at this time is to just show up and be present. So that's it. We're just showing up to be present today.
Absolutely. And that's something that I'm so grateful for. Siobhan was my birth doula virtually during my pregnancy, and just having your mentorship in that has been such a major support to me as I navigate motherhood and showing up in these spaces online, and wanting to continue that. And so, how do we sustain that for one another, but continuing to show up and hold space for one another when we have capacity? So I'm grateful to be here with you and to start off this conversation. Um, I think I'm just going to jump into it if that's okay. Really, where this idea for our conversation today stems from, which a lot of our conversations do, is just what happened in my real life this weekend. And so, just like the kind of surface level like information you need to know, is that I made a quick trip back to Wisconsin, where I'm from. My biological family on my mom's side is from, And I was going there to pick up a pump organ that I inherited. My grandma's house is being sold. She's still living. She is in assisted living. Uh, and still, has lots of things that needs to be gone through. And so there's this family organ that has been in the family home for many years, and I am the quote unquote musician of the next generation, that was asked if I wanted to inherit this organ. And of course, my first response was yes. As an adoptee, it's something that's really an honor to receive something of this like size. And just knowing that it's been in the family for many years was such a beautiful gift. And so it's so much more than just the material of now owning an organ or having an organ in my home, but knowing that there's been many family members that have played those keys, that have heard those sounds, and continues now in my family home. But with that inheritance, I guess, as Siobhan has mentioned before, I started to receive so many more messages. I was connecting with a lot of energy when I was in my grandma's home this weekend, and it just led me down a path of like really interesting synthesizing of like all of these different pieces that felt so separate or not connected at all, and now really coming into play. And so a little history about my family, at least from my perspective, from an outsider's view. I have a great aunt, my grandma's sister, Sue, who passed on in 2020 two, I believe. And she was the church organist, and she was a piano player. She also had her master's in choral conducting, similar to my path in academia, as I had my master's in choral conducting and my doctorate in choral conducting. And she was always really proud of that, knowing that I went into music education without, before we were even reunited. And so knowing that connection as I was reuniting with my birth families was really interesting and really special. Um, but I didn't really know like where to go with that. The other fun little things was that my great aunt Sue and we were part of the same music fraternity, SAI. And so there's just like all these little clues that I feel like have kind of led me to my understanding of it today. But just starting to realize that there was this attraction to music, which I now really have this understanding of music being so magical and having these magical properties. Um, and kind of the messages I've been hearing is, just the ways that music has been used for propaganda, for specifically for the church, and how folks, especially in my family, have been assimilating to this very like mainstream Christian narrative around their healing modalities, their medicines. My grandma was a pharmacist. My great aunt Sue was a church organist. And I see them playing these roles in these healing communities and spaces, but in a very Western and traditional way. Whereas in my generation, me and my sister are self-proclaimed witches and healers and tarot readers, and how we have continued this legacy of healing, but have flipped the script and really expanded upon perhaps what sorry, I'm giggling because Siobhan, I think, just spilled some
You spilled tea on me. I'm gonna change while you keep talking. I'm right here.
For sure. But just how my sister and I have expanded upon these medicines as healers, and have gotten away from more of those assimilated and socially acceptable roles of healers as these academics and pharmacists, but really coming through with our medicine in our generation with more natural modalities and connecting more with the natural world. I definitely am more of an animist than even my own upbringing growing up in the Christian church these days. So just starting to put this all together has been really interesting, because not only did this connect to just kind of the more immediate understandings of witch wounds, and how I've seen my grandma, my great aunt Sue, adjust and make decisions for their own lives that allowed them to survive, to take care of their families, to be successful in their communities. But it actually reaches back to our family tree that I've been tracing for the last few years, back to the 1700s. I'm just going to pause there because I know I've been kind of saying a lot and talking a lot. So I'd really love to hear Siobhan pop in and just checking on your outfit change.
Well, first of all, I'm just getting cozier and cozier here. I already was like, I'm wearing a sweater today, throwing my hair up, and now I'm even softer sweater. So I'm like, you know what? That was a sign from spirit. Be held in your comfiest, raggediest
Love it.
attire.
We
And
are
now we're
matching.
matching. I did not even realize. We always end up matching somehow on a day-to-day basis. Um, and Well, actually, the first thing that sparked was me thinking for the first time about the things that we have collected in my family home. And I never connected really to that. So I wouldn't say it does not cross the hoarding line. However, my family home is the last my dad's kind of the last outside of his sister who doesn't have children or, that is he's her guardian actually. He has no more living family and he was adopted. Well, I shouldn't say he doesn't have any more living. He does, but he's inherited all the things. Nobody else wanted the other things. And so in my family home, we have tons of heirlooms, especially books, documents, photos, a lot of that. And in fact, when Midori comes over, she started to leave offerings because she said she really can feel like the energy in this place of how like busy and full it is. And how I'm kind of like I don't really notice it because they're just part of my spiritual, they're just in my home. I don't notice them too much. But I've been kind of hard on my dad about taking everybody's stuff and like what are we going to do with this, like because it's not just books and stuff, it's actually furniture. So I have a lot of antique furniture because he's really on like they don't make tables like this anymore, they don't make dressers like this anymore. And I have embraced it as part of my style too, but I have never thought of it as I never really considered the adoptee layer of that, of how much that means to him. But I do understand what you're saying around these inheritances, and I'm just thinking a lot about the legacies. And I'm going to let you keep on the story, but I just appreciate the perspective that I'm like, yeah, it's actually such a blessing to be allowed to hold these things. And maybe one day I'll do like a tour of all these little heirlooms in my room. But I have this like trunk that is from, I don't know, it's very, very old. And these things are very alive as an animist witch. And they're very much a part of me and my little family down here. So just appreciating that.
I love that. And yes, I am also somebody in my family that just, if you're getting rid of it, let me have it. I will take it because I want it to stay in the family. I'm very nostalgic like that and want to keep those memories and those energies close. It's really hard for me to sever those relationships with things, as
I
we
just
know, are
lose
not
everything.
things. Yeah.
Now I have like a special, I've gotten better over time, but I definitely am the kind that like, I actually was thinking I need to like do a little art project or something with all of my lost gold hoop earrings because I can't give them away. But they're all lonely. I have like one of all these gold hoops and I'm like, they're real gold. What do I do with it? But I've lost so many except for, the ones I still
Where mix match. Mix match them.
wait till you see them.
Okay.
I mean, I could, I guess. I could go really pirate steez.
That's hilarious.
I think I'm gonna
That's so
start a gold
funny.
hoop project.
I love it. I think we
R.I.P.
should,
to all the
recruit
lost gold
Sam,
hoops.
the professional vibecaster, because I just think their art projects are so fire. So I see you
It
here.
does spark joy. It does spark joy. I'm really, really good at letting things go. So the one thing I have is now my collection. So shout out to all the lost hoops. And back to you, Dr. Kiki.
Amazing. Amazing. So yeah, so that's kind of like where the weekend started, just like very surface, like I'm going to go pick up this organ and I should just know better at this point. I think I'm just really resisting like owning the fact that I'm a medium and that I like really get messages when I'm in different environments, and I'm still figuring out like how I communicate. And I think that's why there's a little bit of resistance because of my academic mind wanting to just be able to say, I am a Claire X, Y, and Z, and this is how they come, and it's very clear, and just kind of leave it at that for probably the safety of myself, which is why that term witch wound comes into play, because I just have been feeling like, wow, there's been such resistance to really owning the fact that I can be in a space or touch an item and feel like all of this history and information was downloaded in my body. And so the experience was, is a very like in the 3D world. I was just in my grandma's house for a couple hours, going through some photo albums, packing up a truck and heading back here to Illinois where I live. And then the next morning I woke up, and first of all, I was just going through photos on my phone, kind of just looking at old family photos, looking at pictures of my great great grandmothers, pictures of my grandmother when she was a baby, making real connections of how my daughter looks to my grandmother when she was a baby, and just really in all of that. But then more and more came through. And what I was led to was this really interesting fact, which is a lot of family dirty laundry. What I was led to was just a quick Google search on Swiss witchcraft. So my family is from Switzerland. My grandma's family is from Switzerland, in Glarus, Switzerland. And when I did a little Google on that, I found out that the last person accused of witchcraft and beheaded and executed for the accusation of witchcraft happened in Glarus, Switzerland, where my family is from. And her name, the accused and the victim, her name is Anna Goldie. I know I'm not saying that correctly, but Anna Goldie. We can put the article that I read in our show notes. But what I read in this article was that she was accused by the Schutte family, by Johann Jacob Schutte. And that name immediately was like a punch in the gut, because I have been working on this family tree on ancestry.com for years. And Schutte is one name that comes up in my family history on my grandma's side for many generations, and located in Glarus, Switzerland. So I know I love this Switzcraft.
By the way, I had to look it up because I remember learning this from Caitlin's podcast, Third Eye Bind, which you said was one of the inspirations for this topic today. It's psychometry is the psychic ability to like hold and like to like read items like that and pick up on it. So I think they talked about that in one of their episodes, but if y'all don't listen to Third Eye Bind, go give them a listen because they're a great witch podcast. The best, I would say.
100%. I was just listening to them this morning. Love Caitlin and Laura. So yeah, sending them lots of love over there. And so in this experience, I was just like, wow, oh my goodness, this realization of my family, even though I wasn't able to find like a direct descendant, or I'm not a direct descendant of that Johann Jacob Schutte, we're definitely a very close cousin, because it's just all mixed up here in this Glarus, Switzerland history. And why I'm so nervous about sharing this and tripping over my words today is just because I feel my ancestors like, ooh, like really tighten up in knowing that like I'm exposing this family story that we've been wanting to avoid for literally centuries, and really kind of go away from. And or I should back up and say, what's really interesting is that the Schutte family, what it says is he was a doctor, and really in the like high society of Glarus, Switzerland. So there's a lot of power, a lot of wealth. And so there was just a lot of protecting the family, protecting this wealth, protecting this status. That is really what I was like focusing on, and like the messages I was receiving was like, think of how many generations there are of these secrets, and just protecting wealth and trying to assimilate into what has been accepted, which is what is connecting me to just more of the immediate ancestors that I have in my life, like my Aunt Sue, who I really do see her life. She was like this single woman, lived by herself her whole life, never had a partner, a church organist, just like focused on her students. She always had her cats. And it was just her as this single person doing her musical magic with her cats and never having a partner, and just kind of that stereotype of what we consider to be witchy, and how she just for her whole life was assimilating into what was considered to be acceptable. And seeing that in my own life of wanting to continue to be validated for this musical magic that I had inherited, um, and now in a place of my life where I really want to use that for the greater good, use that for the collective, and now knowing that my family is directly linked to the witch hunts of Europe, really atoning for the sin of my family, and like and calling on these ancestors for support in speaking to the powers that be today, and realizing that it's all very much connected in my own personal journey of reclaiming this magic, reclaiming my own witch story, and standing in my power, in knowing that I have all of this history that is my foundation, and it's not exciting stuff to own. It's not things that I want to claim for myself, but things that I must account for. And that is my responsibility, that in this vessel that I've been given, I have to connect with all of it. I cannot just look at the fun, trendy Hawaii vacation side of myself. I also have to look at the real harm that my family and ancestors have caused. And how do I do that? That is what helps me get out of, going back to performance, that performative activism. I'm not just here saying free Palestine because I am told to, or think that's how I show people that I care. It's because I know my family history is directly linked to the oppression and marginalization of Black and Brown people all over the world.
Wow. There's something that you're hitting on that I've been thinking about for years now, which is really the place of mixed people. And at this point in time, and first of all, mixed people have always existed, but at this point, our voices, I think, matter because we hold both experiences. I, as someone who's done a lot of ancestor work, readings, and guidance, like you said, like, it's so much cooler and cuter to be Hawaiian. It's so much, like, more interesting, and I see this a lot, especially with white people and mixed white people, that we don't wanna claim them. I don't claim that side, I don't claim this, and you of all people, it would be very easy for you to say, "I've already been through fucking enough here, like, that I do not need to be taking responsibility for their actions. I got nothing to do with them." And it's just not true, because those things show up in the things that we do, in the ways that we act, and even that like you said, that performative activism. There can be this like urge to like be the loudest, to hide that I'm not one of them, and distance ourselves. And then there's also the other side, which is like the silencing of ourselves, because there's all this guilt, like I don't deserve to speak up. And I think there are, we witness this from a lot of white people who don't speak up because it's not their place. And I think we already know, like, part of what we want to approach in this performative activism conversation is that every single voice is needed. Every single voice has a perspective that matters and is important. And we have to root into the responsibilities of these legacies just as much as we brag on them. And as somebody that I'm thinking about the legacy of my ancestors, and this is something that came up in a reading I did for someone last week, which was that when we have powerful ancestors, there are often invisible victims that are forgotten, that maybe they didn't directly. Um, harm it. They didn't, this doctor in your lineage didn't directly go out and kill her, but their actions, and especially we're obviously making our way to the conversation of Zionism and all of this because I see since October 7th how people would always say, like, oh, like, how did the Germans not know in Nazi Germany? How did this happen? And I see it so clearly now. I see the engineering of this surface level value, and especially in liberalism, that's like, I'm doing the right thing by reporting these people. This is what I have to do, like, for the good of the collective. This is what must be done. And it is so surface level, and it is an impact of those ancestors and their fear controlling us, and those unhealed ancestors and their self-righteousness influencing our actions, that just perpetuates this cycle over and over and over. And so just using myself as an example, well, this person I did the reading for last week had and reflected to me what I have in my lineage because they had highly influential recent ancestors, and so do I. My father was adopted by a family that was really influential in the labor union world, and that's something very easy to brag on. Like my grandpa was like the vice president of the National Labor Union, and he had this huge impact in securing workers' rights for Californians. My grandfathers are in history books around the labor movements in California, and that is all true. And what do we know about people who did that in organizing? It was gangster. It was gangster as hell. Like, you're not in the union, you're union busting, you're a scab. There's violence that's very invisible in that. And then same on my mother's side. Her father comes from, he's celebrated as a city councilman in the Philippines, and he's celebrated as the first, well, they call him the father of public schooling, actually, in the Philippines, my grandpa, when I look up these things. But there also, who also is in that family, and this is this is why we're exposing ourselves right now, and it feels nervous because I've felt this self-judgment and shame to say my grandpa's cousin is Rodrigo Duterte, who is an enactor of some of the most terrible violence in the Philippines. And I Filipinos know, if you know, you know, and it's fascist. Like, there is a fascist aspect to a lot of these freedom and, like, advancers of things, these people who get into power. How do they hold that power? And there's just such a complexity in that I could hide from. I could, and I think I hear my ancestors sometimes say, like, you don't have to confront this one, but I see the ways that it shows up in me, and I have to. Like, I'm like, that feels so like, oh, like, I don't want to claim I'm related to this family. Even if you heard the other stories in it, it's not like I'm not part of this family, to be very clear. My grandfather and my grandmother were not together. He was married to a different person with many children his whole life. But I have this legacy for a reason. I think as adoptee, as an adoptee, as someone who my mom's not technically, what is the word actually, that, do you remember the word your father used for that kind of like adoptee of like the community?
I think it's Hanai.
Hanai. Okay.
Yeah.
That concept is what my mom would be more considered too, like, not an adoptee. And so Kiki's dad shared this word that was like, not official, but this
Mhm.
child is just a child of the community, adopted by the community, whoever looks out for them, knowing they don't have present parents. Um, so yeah, really owning that and how easy it is for both of us to say that's not our legacy, that's got nothing to do with me. Um, but it does, and it can, and we have both directions of influence if we want to. And what I actually felt going back to this reading I gave last week from someone who had influential family, was what I felt was actually the men of their lineage lined up saying, like, we can see a lot more now, and can you direct us on how to correct our things? And really them accepting their responsibility to be kind of spiritual allies in our liberation work. And that's kind of the ancestor work that's been evolving from it, which is that we have these people who've done harm that want to also make right, and they can be allies in our movement as well, these spiritual allies.
I love that framing of it. It really allows me to come to it in a way that is empowering, and it doesn't I don't think it's spiritual bypassing at all, because it really roots into the harm that was caused here on earth to other human beings or other beings in general, and then also gives me somebody who needs like a lot of just something material to, like, work with, that, material in the spiritual world, that I can, an act that I can go to my altar with and really feel like I am connecting for a purpose and not for, like, the gross reasons that I would, like, initially imagine, like, in connecting to these ancestors could be of, like, "Give me all of your power and greed," and it's like, "No, I don't want any of that." Like, I just want that to inform me in how I move through my life today, when I'm really trying to go through a grassroots movement of liberation. And it really comes from like these tiny little movements of reclaiming my relationship to myself, to the natural world around me, how I'm a steward of this land, and connecting back to our kuleana. And so it's I just really appreciate that wisdom that you were channeling of how we can be in relationship to these ancestors that have caused harm in the past.
Yeah, that shout out to my spirit guide, Lola Carmen. She's she's a little radical orchestrating in my ear all the time. It's through my clients. So, and that is why, as I've kind of been growing in what lane do I really want to be in, it always comes back to ancestor work. You're ashamed of your whiteness, the answer is ancestor work. You got shitty ass ancestors, the answer is ancestor work. And like you said, like you're not there to do it for the power, because there are ancestors who are down for that too. It's neutral. There's totally ancestors. We could see that out in the world. There are plenty of spirits willing to work on behalf of gaining personal power at the expense of others, because they have moved in the scarcity and the belief that that there isn't enough for everyone, or whatever it is, ideas of supremacy that come into play. And so I kind of want to steer it to what you shared with me before we went live, around what inspired this conversation. And that really is around the like puritanical narratives of activism, and the performative, like the shaming and fears of being performative from people who really care otherwise.
Yeah, I was just listening to Third Eye Bind once again, and they were talking about performance, which just really connected with me in around this moment, and how we've been calling for more and more people to use their voice to say free Palestine, to get involved in this movement. Because personally, I've seen a lot of folks that were really active and vocal around 2020 and Black Lives Matter, but have been really silent in this round of calling for liberation, and really kind of struggling with that. Not in a way where I'm at this point where I'm not going to really call out folks. I know everyone's on their own journey, but just like really wondering like how folks were so active, and now like it's totally crickets now. And it just that word performative activism was brought up again, and I really do feel like cancel culture utilized this word of performative activism, and it scared people away, because I think a lot of folks, at least in my circles, didn't want to get called out for being performative, whether or not they were, but just being afraid of another label, and just really unsure of where their role is in the movement, because they see themselves as being separate from perhaps what's happening in Palestine, and not really having a direct connection to Zionism, or just even that conversation in general around this like historical religious conflict that people just get like really scared about and don't want to talk about. And so just really thinking about the ways that performative activism has been playing a role, I think, in this moment of people being silent and not using their voice.
Yeah, and that's totally one of the tools of Zionism is to like silence people with confusion. It's just far beyond our understanding. Even the president of the university I graduated from said, "This is something for scholars to tell us whether it's a genocide or not." And it's like, no, like since when do we need to be told by a scholar about this? That is, yeah, just like at odds with everything else that we've learned here. And I think there's just so much truth to that, that one thing I'm really softening into is that so often we treat people as sinister and evil and heartless when really we are a world of a lot of traumatized and disconnected and souls in hiding. Like we are not there. It's far less that's actually a lesson I gained from Hawaii. And I shared how we were staying next to the Obama estate. They were our neighbors, not we didn't see them, they were not present there at the same time as us, but it was their home, and there was this day where I was just kind of floating in the little lagoon in front of their house and just staring, and I just, with utilizing, the plant medicine was like, "What's going on here?" And, like, what is this? As someone who has been, recovering bleeding heart liberal, recovering social justice warrior, and hearing the land and the ocean and the plants at their place say like, "It's far more boring than you think. They're not evil, they're just dead inside. They're not evil, they just need to remember. They're scared, they are clouded, they are disconnected, and it's not so evil." And, like, that's just, again, part of decolonizing is breaking out of those labels and binaries of good and evil, that we are all capable of the same we're all capable of both. And that's something that I've really seen since October 7th. It's been so complex because yes, like the actions are evil. I will say the actions are evil. The actions are sinister. The outcome is sinister and evil. Um, and I also know people, and I won't go so much into the Christian Zionist part, but I'll just speak on the Jewish Zionists that I know. Um, there's just so much sadness and grief in me because I see the pain that it comes from. I see the engineering of this mentality that has been so crafted by the colonial mind, and it is very evil too to do that to these people who've experienced such real pain and experienced these same things, and yet it's so narrow on the understanding and so narrow. They want us to believe it's just this specific thing. That's why the word Holocaust doesn't only refer to the Jewish Holocaust, but that's what we associate it with. And I've only understood that till a few years ago. Like, oh, we only heard about the Jewish Holocaust because they looked white. And that was to build sympathy, and not really understanding the Israel project and how that's influenced even our education around that. And so it's really just been expanding my heart and my understanding. And I can see the ways that that has then influenced me to not speak up as much because I feel like social media can't hold the nuances. I feel like, well, I also felt like I was talking in an echo chamber because I've been talking about Palestine for like several years, up to 10 years. I think I really got radicalized into the Palestinian liberation movement probably around like 2012. But I still didn't understand there was so much I still didn't get. Um, and it's kept me from it's even before going live feeling nervous because there's people that we know hear the term and immediately there's a nervous system response, and that's why we approach everything the way we do, because no progress is going to get made by being on there saying fuck Zionist, and it is fuck Zionism. But there is some performance in that, and again, it's wherever you're at. It's wherever you're at on it. I think there is something very sacred about the rage that's awakening in people, and I love it. I love to see the passion and the fire that is growing, and the awakening, And I just pray that, and this is why we're showing up here, is because all my prayer is that they can um, make all the connections into the broader sense, just like Black Lives Matter. I think those people truly cared when they posted that many people cared when they posted that black square, and didn't even think, didn't know the words, performative, whatever, and then they're like, "Oh, fuck, I did something bad," and and it's just like, again, the colonial culture is hierarchical and is like, everyone just wants to be good. Everyone wants to be seen as good, and I forget who I spoke about this with recently, but it was kind of noticing that in our parents' generation, of how many people in that generation stop conversations of progress because they feel like they're being called bad, and that inner child in a society that's emotionally immature, where our inner children are, a society ridden with childhood sexual abuse and violence and oppression and childism, that you now have these adults who all they can think about is, am I good or bad? Do you think I'm good or bad? And the conversation stops there because, "Oh, you think I'm bad, and now I'm tossed out. There's no place for me." And who is that helping?
100%. And I love this quote, or this comment by Sam saying, shamed out of participation. That's exactly it. And that is why so much of our work at Soft Power is around releasing shame, and releasing shame around our creativity. My work, specifically releasing shame around the voice, because of this very fact that I was seeing so many people not using their voice that I knew really value liberation, humanity, love, all of these things that we talk about, but are literally shamed out of participating because they are ashamed of using their voice, of singing, of their body, of moving. And that is keeping them stuck in these trauma responses, because all of this energy is being held in the body, being stagnant, becoming tense, tightness, becoming chronic illnesses. And then there is no way to participate because you are literally living day to day, just trying to get through your own, and that's not, I don't want to just come across and say that that's, for every single person's story, but I see that a lot in the people that I work with, where there is just this chronic tightness and tension in the voice because of just not using it. And then having that narrative in your head of whoever told you when you were younger that you shouldn't sing or use the voice or take up space using the voice. And now you're in a space where you're an adult, you see these atrocities happening, and then you're frozen and you don't know what to do with it. And that's really what I think that our response is with Soft Power, is softening into our vulnerability and utilizing that creativity to work through and massage out those knots.
Absolutely, and I'm gonna take it even further on what you've taught me, which is that intrinsic connection between the voice and the womb and the pelvic floor and our creativity, and now we have this tightness in there that then impacts, one, it shows up a lot in people's just menstrual cycles, people with uteruses, in the menstrual cycle, and actually even people with penises, erectile dysfunction. Like, I would be curious, and that just dawned on me now. I want to look, okay, note to selves, let's look into that. I want to look into what that connection is, because I wouldn't be surprised if that's also connected to the voice. Do you know anything around that before I just like start
Not
conspiracying
specifically.
out here?
No, not
But it has to be,
specifically.
right? Like,
Oh, it's pelvic floor, period. So that's what
yeah,
I've actually started using, in the language that I use, is just pelvic floor.
pelvic floor, yeah.
Yeah,
Yes.
absolutely.
Yes. So just thinking about that like this shaming into silence, this, how that impacts that, and then even just the energetic, like the symbolism of that creativity and how that impacts the imagination, how that, to me, creativity is our problem solving, um, energy. Like, to me, like, I know people, like, there can be art and all of that, but it doesn't even have to get as like beautiful and creative as that. It's so simple as your literal ability to conceptualize that something different is possible. And then that's where we get into the nihilism and defeat of, this is it, this is just the way it is, and it's so sad, and I feel that, and my heart's just been breaking talking to folks of an older generation that just go like, so sad. And it pisses me off. I'm just, and I want more. I'm like, give me more than just so sad. Like, but that's the performance of care. And so when that was what I was saying, when you said like the performance, I'm like, everything comes down for me looking at this as that it's part of the colonial again design, that they want the performance of care without the action and the solutions. And I see myself, and that has been my growth as an advocate for social and human rights, is seeing that the times when I was very much more loud and vocal and participating and calling things out, and a lot more, bringing a lot more fire there, was definitely reflective of a lack of power in my own life. And the only thing I could do was to use my voice on social media. And that was okay. Now, when I look back, I'm like, that's what I could do then with what I understood. And now I have more to offer to the movement. But there was still something so like misguided about the where I was taking out that energy, because it's not at one another that needed. And if it was at one another, and it, because I do think it actually is in some ways. I'm like, one, it's not the people, it's the systems, but also the solution is in our, with our people and our relationships. Because I'm also seeing, and this is like a horrifying thing to think, but it feels true to me at this moment. And just for the listeners, I think a lot out loud, so I might change my mind. But for me at this moment, what I'm feeling is that my energy is actually not best use on a ceasefire. It is to support, and I won't say to not, because yes, that's what Palestinians have asked of us. And that's what you said to me earlier, was like, it's not about what we think is best. It's actually also honoring, that's a doula, like doula principle is, let people tell you what they need. And Palestinians have said, please share our stories, please call for the ceasefire, please continue. And I also see that there's no way we're going to get what those demands are, because it's directly in opposition to the entire engineering of the colonial project. And therefore, and that's not, I see how that can border on nihilism, like it's not going to happen, but it's just understanding how deep those roots go. I will keep advocating ceasefire now, and it's not enough, because things are in motion. We see what their response is. We see the revisionist history already building. We see Spain, and like really beautiful to see the prime ministers of Spain, Ireland, and Norway stand up there and say we're willing to do it. And I'm going to be curious to see what that means, because it's time to save face. Once we saw the videos of this, it's time to start saving face, and it's crossed the line for people now. And it's like, what didn't cross the line for you? Why did you have to see a beheaded child for it to cross the fucking line for you? And that's where my anger is starting to build up again, because that's where I'm just like what wasn't clicking before? What did you need to see? And that's just been my question to everyone around me lately. It's just like, what more do you need to see? And that's just what's proven to me, and it's really expanded my understanding of how human compassion works, because it's just not, I don't know, it's not even that they don't care, but there is this, like, freezing in all of this. So, I'm curious how, like, performance, and again, we keep quoting Caitlin on this because that was a catalyst, shout out Caitlin Grania, who has said, "Performance is currency in the spirit world, in the spirit realm. Performance is currency." And I just wanna hear what you think about that as a performer and artist, who wanted to talk about this today.
Yeah, no, I love this, and just thank you for all of your wisdom. Um, really coming back to this performance idea, in that podcast, I was just reflecting on the ways that in my education and the ways that I was trained, I felt like I was being trained to just be a performer for the colonial project, to uphold these power dynamics, these between students and teachers, or even power dynamics between like performers and audience members, and just to like uphold these institutions of performance that have been deemed appropriate by the colonizer. And now, with reframing and having a better understanding of performance since leaving the institution, realizing that performance is currency in the spiritual world, that what I have been doing my whole life is extremely powerful and magical. And so, what does it look like to be a performer for liberation and to keep sharing songs of freedom and songs of liberation that do not uphold these other standards that I had been previously taught to? And so just really connecting with, even seeing, this is for a totally different conversation, but how the music industry has been really exposed lately in these really toxic power dynamics and relationships, and the money and the greed, and how that has totally blown up. And seeing now, like, those of us who are on this call that identify as performers, as artists, as um, musicians, singers, that we really have an opportunity here to connect with these roots, connect with our ancestors, good, bad, ugly, otherwise, and call on them for support to be able to continue sustaining us through these times where we see a bombing at a refugee camp, and we see babies being decapitated and pregnant women dying, burning alive, and still be able to move forward, because that will stop me in my tracks every single time if I just sit and think about that reality. That is fucking horrible. And so if I'm really real with myself, I can only continue showing up here for Tapped In, for Soft Power, if I have some sense that my cries, my wails are being heard, and maybe not by the people around me and my community, but by the spiritual realm. And so I will continue showing up to my altar to connect with my ancestors, to connect with you all, because I do trust that with this strength in numbers, that we can use our voices in song, and not to harm anyone, but to really call on the greater spirits to help us materialize liberation.
Just taking a moment to really let those words land in our bodies, because that really sparked my tears. Because I think so much about the way that Palestinians use the word martyr, and how that is why Palestine will be free, because you cannot you cannot eliminate people of who believe in their eternal life. You cannot eliminate. They will be back. There are souls that have already probably chosen to come back again and again into Palestine, souls who want to go back, who see themselves as martyrs because they are here, and that is why we tell the stories. That is why we share the stories, and that is something that is difficult to say out loud, because it can so easily be seen as a spiritual bypassing, or as a, I don't want it ever to be twisted that that's something that they're choosing in any way, but there is something to be said about people who know they cannot be extinguished, who know that their souls are eternal. And I know that's why my spirituality grounds me into speaking out, because I'm no longer afraid to die. If I die tomorrow, bitch, I'll be back. I'll be back. I hear people say all the time they pray this is their last life on earth, and I'm just like, I think that a lot. And I know I'm going to come back. I know there's something that's here worth returning for. There's something here to do. And that's it. They tried to bury us, but we are seeds, and let those tears water the seeds of liberation, because souls can't be destroyed. Not easily, at least. And that is where Zionism is kind of twisted, is you think that, and I want to go, actually, what has been on my mind this weekend was the Christian Zionist story of why they support Zionism, is because they believe that when, and this is all in quotation marks, this is what I understand to be the belief of Christian Zionism, evangelical Zionism, is that when all the Jewish people are returned to their promised land, then Christ will come again. Is that accurate kind of to what they, okay, I wanna make sure that is before I continue my thought, which was that, what if it's not the achievement of Jewish people returning home that brings it, but what if it's the total lack of humanity and what you did to get them there? What if it is the actual violence on these people on this promised land, the blood on the soil that will trigger the awakening, the I don't really know what I believe in this, but the Christ consciousness people talk about, and I like to think about, I have complicated feelings on Jesus, but I like to think about the radical Jesus, the Jesus that was for all people. What if it's that? What if it's us watching y'all attempt to avenge a harmed people by any means necessary that will wake up the consciousness of the earth, and that is the return of spirit and love, and that can only happen if we look. That can only happen if we watch and listen and sit with this and look within ourselves of what that means for us. So much we have learned by these people, like through this Palestinian struggle, through watching olive trees be cut and thinking indigenous people would never do that. And what does that mean about the ways that I engage with my land? What does that mean when I go to a beautiful place and think, I want to live here, I want to own it, I want to buy this land, I need to own a piece of this? What if returning, the attempt to avenge Jewish people is the catalyst for the consciousness reawakening and the value for life? I don't know. But that's just what my prayer is. That's my only prayer at this point, is like, please let it be for something. Please just let it be for something here.
Let it be for something. Absolutely. And I continue to pray that alongside you, because why is it still happening? We keep asking, like, this is the line for whole countries and nations to start speaking up. And actually, I think this will be my final thought for today. In addition to this organ that I inherited, I also found this old German Bible. And as many of you know, my daughter's name is biblical, and I was really curious, so I was leafing through, turning pages, and found the Book of Psalms, where my daughter's name is from. It happened to be dog-eared, which really brought me some peace that somebody in my family had been reading that word, and now there's a physical manifestation of that word in our family lineage. But one verse that really stood out to me, and I'm actually going to just like pull it up quick because I don't want to. Again, I'm like always worried that we're going to mess it up. The verse that came to mind when you were speaking was Psalm 9, verse 20. And basically it says, let the nations know that they be just mortal, that these nations are not, these empires that are that are built for all of these other things that imperialism and colonialism have been teaching you. You are just men. You are just mortal. You are just human. And realize that what you are doing to these other human beings is extremely violent, and look within yourself that you are doing it to yourself as much as you are doing it to others. And so just really kind of grounding in that prayer that, like, I'm not a Christian, so I don't utilize the Bible in that way, but just like that prayer of, may these nations know that they are just mortal.
Yeah. My favorite fact is the average empire last 250 years. And we're right about there. And I thought about one of my favorite childhood movies, The Swan Princess, and there's something for those who haven't seen it, it's based off Swan Lake, the ballet, and so Rothbart is the villain, and Rothbart's plan to take over the kingdom is to marry he kidnaps and and is going to marry the princess. And what he says, I think someone says, like, why not just take over? Because he's a magician, he's a powerful wizard. And he says, if you steal something, you'll spend your whole life trying to defend it. So that's why he was going through marriage, so it would be rightfully his. And there's just so much to say about that to those who ascribe or are neutral to Zionism. You steal something, you will spend your whole life trying to keep it. And that's it. Is you're mortal. Nations are mortal. Nations, that's why we're not here for a two-state solution. We're not here for, you know, I think that's what the land says, like, everyone can be here. Like, that's the lesson from the Aina in Hawaii was everyone can be here. Like, we're not, we're returning stewardship. We're not returning ownership. Nobody owns this shit. You're a steward. You're here on earth, and just remember that. And so, closing out on the topic of performative activism, let performance be neutral for you. Give that performance. Let yourself be performative. Who are you speaking to is up to you. Even Tapped In, we actually knew when Tapped In incepted, Midori and I knew, and even still, we don't do much marketing yet. We don't really put too much, um, we would like to. It's in the plans. We wanna reach people, and I think that is part of the growing responsibility as the show grows in meaning and affirming. But first and foremost, it was a gesture to our spirits. It was a gesture to our spirits who said, "Show up, be vocal, we see you." And I even tell that, and I practice that for myself when I don't wanna work, when I don't know the words. I tell my clients that too, like, if you don't know, just sit at your computer and posture to the universe that you're ready, posture to your ancestors that you're ready for something different. And maybe performance is what you need to start doing to just indicate that intention, and the rest will fall into place. When I indicated my intention, that was what I did the year that I met you, Kiki. And that's where I'm just really gonna, like, that year, 2021, January, I started with sitting my spouse down and telling him that I see he's not okay, and that I feel I don't want him to keep I feel him distancing, and I don't want that to happen. And when that didn't get the result I wanted, I remember I just indicated and postured to my ancestors, I'm ready for something different. I'm ready to accept responsibility for my life. I'm ready to be happy. I'm ready. I'm actually ready to be happy again. And from there, now, only 3 years later, I can see who was led into my life, who was led out of my life. And it has been so heartbreaking. And that is where maybe my activism started more performative, but now it's real, and it's led me down this path where I come out of October of last year and I'm like, I'll never be the same. And I can't relate to people who, if that didn't, I don't know. Everybody has their journey. Everyone has the choices and the options, and it's up to y'all to take that. I think there's doors every day that you walk by that you can peek in and start a new life. And it's that choice. But for me, it's like I'll never be the same from what I've seen. I'll never unlearn from what I've seen. And I know that I asked for my best life, and I postured to my spirits. I'm ready. I'm ready to be who I came to earth to be. I'm ready to remember, and I'm ready to take action. And they listened, and they led me to the material things. And it took a very long time for that to resonate. And last night I was journaling, and that's the last thing I'll share was that as I was journaling last night, I wrote, I was just thinking about the people who don't seem to get it yet, and what I wrote was just, my prayer at this point is that when our grandchildren learn about this Holocaust in school, that you're honest. My prayer is that we can be honest about our confusion. We can be honest that we didn't act. We can be honest that we didn't understand. And that would still be a more powerful indicator to me of change than pretending like it was just beyond what we could, it was just be out of our hands. It was just how the world works. Like, at least please let us all come out more honest about our own limitations and our own choices, and there's still something human in that. And anybody who might be listening who hasn't posted, you don't need to post. May your have one conversation, have that if the only conversation you can safely have is with your ancestors, start there. If it's just with your own self, start there and start getting curious, because that's it. It's just a curiosity and the leaning in that you felt something, and honor that feeling that you have. Honor the sadness that you feel. Honor the disempowerment that you feel, and know that it's connected to an entire system designed to disempower you for this exact outcome. And coming back to that, let they tried to bury us, but we are seeds. Now let your tears and your rage, let your rage raise that field. Let your tears water those seeds, because it's inevitable. Israel will not, Palestine will be free. Israel will not exist. Whether it's our lifetimes or our children's or our next lifetime when we come back to continue this, it's inevitable, because we don't own this shit. I don't have a cute ending on it all to tie it in a bow. Let love till the soil. Thank you.
I think
That's
that's
it.
it.
That's
That's
thank you.
it.
I was needing the words to close us out. Let love till the soil.
Yeah.
I just want to, like, I'm gonna just fully cry after this. Adriana, Sam, Eva, Flo Flo is on the soft power account for those who can't tell. Nathan, anyone else who has joined us, who is listening. Yeah, that's it. Let your love till the soil, whatever that looks like. Please don't be fearful that performance is for nothing. Performance is sacred. Chibuzo was our guest last year talking about
Mhm.
performance, and I'm going to revisit that today, and inviting others to revisit, because performance is currency. And we are wealthy, and we are here at a time where we have the ability to perform for the masses and reach, TikTok. There's a trend right now of people saying straight up, can y'all get me to 10,000 followers so that I can do XYZ? And that's it. We're lifting each other up. Celebrity culture is done for. They're not performing for shit anymore. Give us a good performance if you're gonna claim that role, but we're done with that. And our love is still in the soil here, and the world will be free.
100%. The world will be free, and let love till the soil. We are the new icons. Yes.
Yes. Y'all are the icons. We are iconic. And with that, thank you all for joining us this week on Tapped In. Thank you for being present with us. You can listen to Tapped In on YouTube, of course, but also Spotify now. We have season 3 and select episodes of season 2 available on Spotify. Connect with us on Substack. Know that we are organizing and building for this. We are building and tilling this soil for y'all to plant your seeds and to support each other, because we are all we got. Tap in with us next week at the same time, live every Tuesday, 11:11 Pacific, 1:11 Central. Thank you, Dr. Kiki. I love you so much.
I love you too.
See you all soon. Pose for the ancestors.